Hi, it's Ken Boon. Not sure whether you guys caught the interview with Minister Tan Leng last Thursday. So that was part of a press conference held by the Singapore Economic Resilience Taskforce. And if that name doesn't ring a bell, you just got to think back to the whole Task Force Man meme from GE 2025. Yeah, the one in Pongo. So this task force is led by DPM and Trade Minister Gan Kim Yong, and it's meant to ensure that Singapore's economy can hold steady against external shocks, such as the ones from the US with the new tariffs. Okay, now that we got that out of the way, Minister Tan was specifically addressing fresh graduates and young people stepping into the workforce. So let's take a look at what was said. But before we do that, I just want to say it's not easy for him to front a conversation around one of the biggest pain points for young Singaporeans today. Because employment isn't some plug and play issue. It's kind of complicated, and a lot of the solutions require long term planning and solutioning. So I was actually reminded of something Joel Lim from the Political Prude. So he was talking about how political marketing works. And that got me thinking, maybe the way that the government positions the employment issue is probably just as important as the way that they solve it. Because some of these structural problems we're seeing is going to take some time. And how people feel about it in the meantime, that can shape whether the solutions get the breathing space before people get really frustrated. Now, Minister Tan has been at the forefront of this issue for a while now, and he has been the face of employment, especially over the last and current parliament terms. And here's a thought, maybe it's time for a new face. Sometimes when a message is repeated by the same person over and over again, it just stops landing. You know what I mean? Like those of you with partners probably get this. Like sometimes your boyfriend, girlfriend, your husband, wife say something and it just goes in one ear and out the other. And this it's not because you don't care, right? It's because you heard it so many times. And maybe someone like Minister of State for Manpower, Dinesh, could have fronted this. He has that friendly face, that approachable vibe, and it's new. So it might help to soften the blow of what's honestly a tough message. And I get that he's not part of the task force, but I also get that sometimes putting someone that's not full minister in front could send the wrong message. But it's just something I was thinking about from a messaging point of view. Anyways, let's hear what Minister Tan had to say.
One segment that we have heard concerns about is fresh graduates who may face anxieties starting their careers in these turbulent times. We understand.
So my first reaction when I heard Minister Tan say he understands, honestly, I was like, walao, I can't believe he said that. Because I immediately thought, so the next thing he's going to say is that we're monitoring. And so after sitting with it for a while, I realized that maybe I was being a bit unfair and a bit unkind. I mean, really, what do we expect him to say? If he doesn't say he understands, he gets slammed for being out of touch. But if he says it, people doubt the sincerity. So it's like a lose-lose. And people will say like, how can a minister earning 1 million a year understand what it means to be unemployed? Or that he's too far removed from the ground to understand what young people are going through. And the end result is that people start to doubt and lose a bit of trust. So here's what I think. Maybe the middle ground is just to be a little bit more specific. Like when you say you understand, how do you understand? So if I were in Minister Tan's shoes, maybe I'll say something like, we understand, our team studied the data and we've spoken to students in our tertiary institutions. So we look downstream at hiring trends and employer practices. So I can't tell you everything in this one sitting, but here's the one interesting thing I found. So some banks are giving senior staff tasks that used to be handled by juniors. And initially, it was to reduce the pressure and workload on junior staff because of burnout. But in practice, what has happened is that it's ended with fewer hires and even layoffs at the entry level because banks realized that they can do more with less. So it was a way to cut costs. And that has had a knock-on effect on graduate employment. And it's insights like this that's gone directly into how we design our policy responses. And this is what we have done, ABC. Now, if Minister Tan had done that, I think a lot of people would genuinely feel hurt because you're not just saying I understand, right? You're showing the work, you're kind of providing context on how you know what to do, and that gives people something to hold on to. And this whole thing takes maybe like 30 seconds, a minute to say, but it completely shifts how the message lands with people.
We understand their anxieties, but we want them to be assured that there is support available. Our IHLs have stepped up their career guidance efforts to better support graduates in their job search. WSG has also introduced Polaris by the Volunteer Career Advisors, or VCAs, to connect young workforce entrants with industry experts for insights on career paths, access to industry knowledge, and professional networks so that they can develop a personalized career development plan.
Then Minister Tan starts talking about what the government has done. And sure, it's fair, right? He has to explain that. But let's be honest, if the solutions were working as intended or working fast enough, we wouldn't be having this press conference in the first place.
At the same time, I would really appeal to graduates and parents to stay calm.
So there's also this bit where he tells people to stay calm. And I don't know about you, but when was the last time you told someone to calm down and it actually worked? Most of the time, it actually makes things a lot worse, no? So maybe not the best choice of words.
We have taken a more granular and careful look at the data on jobs and graduate employment this year. While it is still early days, we do have up to June statistics. We do see some silver lining in the data so far. Employment rates of the 2025 graduating cohort in June this year, were comparable. In fact, they are slightly higher than they were in the same time last year. So if you compare June 2025, you compare with June 2024, actually the employment rates have gone up. Vacancies for entry-level jobs have also remained steady. Now, just to illustrate my point further, based on a very preliminary MOM study, employment rates as at June 2025 is 51.9%. They are slightly higher than at June 2024, which was at 47.9%. So there's a 4% higher rate for the 2025 and 2024 graduating cohorts respectively. But the caveat, like I said, these are early days because you're only looking at a very small snapshot.
So then after that whole build-up, we finally get the number we were all waiting for. So as of June 2025, the employment rate for fresh graduates is at 51.9%. So Minister Tan also highlights the year-on-year improvement of about 4% and that these are still early days. Wow, but let's be real, 51.9% is a horrible number. And yeah, I know employment can be defined loosely, right? Based on how long you're looking for, what kind of roles you land. But that is a really uncomfortable figure.
But whatever we can do to urge and to calm the apprehensions, I think would be important. So, again, I want to re-emphasize the point. The vacancies for entry-level jobs have also remained steady. The opportunities remain available. In the public sector alone, there are currently about 2,400 immediate vacancies suitable for fresh graduates, and this is available on careers at gov. This includes roles such as engineers and software developers. Our graduates can learn more about these vacancies through a public service career fair, which the government will organize in the coming month, August.
So what also stood out to me is that he only talked about public sector vacancies. So what about the private sector? I think the absence of that information just leaves a lot of room for speculation that things are really worse than it sounds. But I'll share something as someone who used to hire people at work. I can tell you that companies sometimes post job ads just to fish. They want that one perfect unicorn candidate that probably doesn't exist at the price that probably is impossible. And if they don't find that person, they just leave the role open. Which is why sometimes you go on LinkedIn, right? You see some jobs that are there for months and months and they just are never filled. And if the government shared data on how those 2,400 public sector roles actually get filled each month and how many new ones get created each month, I think that will help a lot. And same for the private sector numbers, because that kind of detail gives a clearer and a more understandable picture of the job market and it helps people, right?
To our 2025 graduates, it is still early in your job search. We encourage everyone to keep an open mind to different opportunities in their job searches. Rest assured, the government, our tripartite partners, will continue to support you and walk every step with you.
So one thing that really surprised me was when Minister Tan mentioned that young people might be too picky. My first instinct was to disagree because it's a tough market, so why on earth would people not take up roles? But then I looked at the numbers. So from what I could pull together from different sources over the couple of years, right? And some of these are not going to be perfect, but it gives you a sense of the trends. So the employment rates for autonomous university grads are trending down, while starting salaries are trending up. So that's not exactly what you expect if people were desperate to just take whatever job came their way. So yeah, so it seems like many Gen Z graduates are still holding out for the job that matches their values and their expectations. And I respect that. I'm a millennial, so when I graduated, I just took the first thing that came along. I didn't even think much about the pay or culture fit. But then again, back then, we didn't really have to stress so much about inflation or BTO prices. But you know what? Different time, different pressures. Honestly, if I had one advice to fresh graduates today, I think you need to separate the noise from what's important. I think finding the job in the right industry or function is important. And if not, finding a job that gives you the relevant transferable skills to be in the right industry or function. Pay should be secondary. Whether you can work hybrid work arrangements is secondary. Whether it's a full-time permanent or contract role, that should be secondary. Because in the long run, everything is noise except for the experience and skills you pick up along the way. Alright, I don't want to sound like an old uncle telling war stories to our Gen Zs, right? Anyways, what do you think about Minister Tan's comment? Does it reflect your own experience in the job market? Do you feel hurt, or does it feel like there's a gap between what the government understands versus what you're experiencing? So leave your comments below. I really do want to hear from you, especially if you're currently job hunting or you're in your first role. So thanks a lot for watching this episode. There was actually another part of the interview where Labour Chief Ng Chee Ming talked about the 4 gaps in youth employment. So if I find some time later this week, I'll take a stab at reacting to that too. And until next time, this is our Red Dot Perspective, and I'll see you guys soon.